So hi, in the previous video I went over arrays, how to create them, how to fill them, some of their properties. So I won't do that again. In this video I'm going to go over two types of loops, for loops and while loops. And loops are used all the time in programming because we need to do things repeatedly. Oftentimes loops are used with lists because we need to go through a list and look at each element of the list or a subset of the elements of the list. So we need some way to traverse the list, and loops are the natural way to do that. So first we'll look at this for loop. It has three parts. An initialization part initializes the loop variable. I use LCV for loop control variable. You could use any variable name. The stopping condition of the loop, in this case it's going to stop when LCV becomes equal to the length of the array, which remember is, if there are 10 elements in the array, length is 10, but the last element of the array is at position 9 because we started at 0. And then how much we're changing LCV each time after we've gone through the loop. So this well, let's see what this will do. Let's go ahead and compile it. And we'll make a new object, and we'll print out with for loop. And Jeffrey's at the 0 position, and that list of grades at the 0 position is 12, and 72 is at the 0 position of the heights. And then LCV increases, so now LCV is 1, and Matt's at the 1 position, Rob is at the 2 position, Zach is at the 3 position. And that's pretty much all there is to it. There are a couple of things that you can do with for loops. You don't have to start at 0, you can start wherever you want. We could have started at 5. You could also use count down, right? We could start at 9. And then in this case, we want to make sure that we change our stopping condition, right? So this would be changed to, well, let's go ahead and change it. Well, LCV is greater than or equal to 0, and LCV minus minus. So let's compile that and make a new one. And yep, it went backwards. Nick is at position 9, Leek is at position 8, down to Jeffrey, who's at position 0. Okay? So we can do that. Let's change that back to 0, LCV less than list of names dot length, without the parentheses because we're accessing that length field of the immutable in length array. Okay? And we do want to go LCV plus plus. Oh, we don't need to go by ones. We could do whatever we want. We could say LCV equals LCV plus 3, right? Oops. Whatever we want. So you can alter the starting condition of your loop variable, the initialization of your loop variable. You can alter the stopping condition, and you can alter the increment or the decrement each time through the loop, right? And so now let's look at while loops. So while loops take those three things that are in one line in the for loop, the initialization, the stopping condition, and the increment, and they breaks them out into separate lines. So you first initialize your loop variable before the loop. Then within the while loop parentheses, all you have is your stopping condition. And then within the loop, you have to make sure that you approach the stopping condition. If you do not have this line, you're going to get an infinite loop because LCV will not change once it enters the loop. LCV never changes. It never gets to this condition. It never gets to the condition where LCV is equal to list of names.length because it starts out at 0 and list of names.length is 9 and LCV never changes. So that will create an infinite loop, and let's see that. You have to be careful of infinite loops. I'll show you how to get out of them if you create one. So it prints Jeffrey over and over again because Jeffrey's at position 0 and we're not changing LCV. So to stop this, just right-click here and choose Reset Java Virtual Machine, or press Shift-Command-R. Either one will do it. And we're out of that infinite loop. Let's go fix it by leaving that like that, right? And just have this comment here to indicate that you can, of course, increment LCV by other values. You can do it by 3s, you can do it by 6s, whatever you want, right? And you can also, in this case, actually it's a minus, so you're going down. So, but if you're going down, make sure that you change your starting position. You need to change your starting position, your starting value of LCV plus your condition, right? Otherwise you get into another infinite loop, but you know how to get out of infinite loops now, right? You always have to, your loop always has to approach your stopping condition. Otherwise you'll get an infinite loop if you're not doing that. Make sense? Okay, finally, a method that's a little bit more complicated, but not too much, just a little step forward, is just find a student. So in this, we're gonna loop through the list. We're gonna enter a student name. We're gonna loop through the list until we find it, and then we're gonna say where we found it, what position within the array we found it. So we start off by saying that found is false. We need to have this variable so that at the end of the loop, we can know whether we actually found the name or not. So we're assuming that we're not going to find the name, so we set found equal to false. Then we just get from the user a name. And now we're using a for loop here, and we're looping through, this should be very familiar to you from up above, we're looping through all the names in the array list, the array. And if at any position within the array, because LCV is changing by 1s, right? First 0, then 1, and etc. If at any position within the array, the string that's there, because what's in this array, it's strings, so we need to compare strings with other strings using the string method dot equals. It's actually equals, but the dot is to say, you know, for this string, call that string's equals method, and pass into it as the other string, the string we're comparing to, the search name, which we entered up here. And if those are equal, then we'll output the name and where it's located. It's at position LCV within the list, okay? And we'll set found equal to true. And down here, after the loop, if not found, right, which is a shorter form of saying if found equals false, that's the not operator in Java. If it's not found, then system out println that name is not in the list. All right, so let's try this. And find a student, and we'll first search for Zach. And it says that name is not in the list, but we know that Zach is in the list. Problem is that the string equals method does an exact comparison. It has to match in both the letter and the case. So what we really want to search for is capital Zach, and that says Zach is in the array at position 3, which is exactly where Zach is in the array. Okay. Cool. Now, if there happen to be, we'll do this last thing. We will say we're going to change a position in the array. So although we can't change the length of the array, we can change it what's at any position. So at position, we'll say 6, we're going to put Zach. Now whatever is currently at position 6, I can't remember what name is there, is going to get overwritten by Zach. It will be clobbered basically. So Zach will now be at position 6 in the array. Okay? and we will compile that. Now when I run this, what should happen when I call find a student? Well, if I search for Zach, it's going to say Zach is in the array at position 3, Zach is in the array at position 6. Okay, that makes total sense, right? Because this for loop is going to go all the way through until it gets to, it's looked at all the elements. Now, if for some reason or other we wanted to, as soon as we found a name, we wanted to break out of this, we could use the Java command break, which will exit out of, actually I don't think this is going to work. Let's just check this. I don't use break very often, but I wanted to introduce it to you. Yeah, okay, it broke out of the loop. Cool. What I wasn't sure of is whether it would break out of the just this if block, statement block, or it breaks out of the loop, but it breaks out of the loop. So if we get rid of that break statement, compile, find a student, Zach, yep, finds them both. So, introduction to the break statement, which you won't find very many cases to use. All right, so that's a quick introduction to the for loop and the while loop in Java. Thank you.